I have been a writer.
What just happened there?
You tried to throw it through the open
I was trying to get my
door.
wallet out of the shot, and I threw it right at the glass. Because the door was open.
Throwing it through the open door that turned out to be closed.
Okay, I've got some questions here.
All right.
I got it.
All right.
I want everything that comes out of you guys not to be relevant to what the things I'm asking about here.
Good luck with that. that sounds like it's going to require us to stay on topic.
Jason, why are you a writer?
The writing has been going on most of my life. I've known that I'd be doing something with words with my life since high school. And I think becoming a Christian, all it did was shift the focus. And because reading history, I started discovering early on that sayings like the pen is mightier than the sword really actually are true. That words have always been the things that directed the world. Poetry and story in particular has always been the things that directed mankind. It's the way that we justify our actions, our existence. We set ourselves up as a character in a story in whenever we start explaining ourselves. And so I always knew I wanted to do something important, and so I knew that meant learning to deal with words for myself. That was my direction of things. So, and now the storytelling, I've seen the way stories can bless people. Seeing the way well-told stories can bless people. That a good joke at the right time can change the atmosphere of somebody's day and or life. And so I really switched over to comedy, partly because of years of being married to an incredibly funny woman, and then and seeing the value and the impact that she was having, and I think partly just because as the longer you live life, the more you realize that we're living in a comedy, that fundamentally we're living in a comedy. All of the genres represent different aspects of history, different parts of the story, but the overarching story of history is a comedy. Mm-hmm. And so, I realized I want to write comedies for that reason. And then you discover it's actually the hardest thing also, and so that's another reason to do it. Right. If you can write good comedy, then you have conquered the hardest of the art forms, word wise, and so that keeps me going.
How does that bring you to where you are today at Loor? Why does a writer become concerned with movies and television in that way?
Yeah. So
somebody so concerned with the word.
So when I was finishing up my call to a particular church as a pastor, I was trying to figure out where God was calling me next, and as I was recovering from a health collapse, and started writing stories, and had been wanting to write stories because I had seen, in particular for teenagers, because I loved and connected with the teenagers in my church, but I saw that they didn't have good novels to read, really any good stories. There was nobody in the conservative Christian world that said, that's my target audience. Mm-hmm. And so they were stuck reading Twilight and John Green and things like that. And there's some good stuff out there, but for the most part, there's nobody purposefully doing it. So I said, that's what I want to do. And trying to become I was working, trying to become a novelist, wrote a couple of novels, but every time I would meet other novelists and try and trade manuscripts and work with someone to improve, they would retreat, and I realized that novelists are kind of they tend to retreat into their own and work by themselves, and that is not my natural bent. And so, I started thinking, well, what's a communal storytelling art? And I also love television as an art form, and so realized I think that's the way to do it. And so I started shifting the novel idea that I was working on at the time into a TV show, and developing it and learning about TV writing and learning about just went to the library and got books on how to become a TV writer, and started studying and figuring out the technique aspect of it. But a big part of it then is building the relationships. And so started trying to figure out how to build relationships with filmmakers in the industry. And the more relationships I built, the more I realized that it's going to be really difficult it's a difficult path for a Christian trying to really keep his faith that doesn't want to make Hallmark movies. And so that process worked with secular producers, secular directors, secular writers, and was always open about being a Christian and didn't have a problem. Sometimes it kept me from certain work, but that's not work that I am that interested in anyway.
Right.
But along the way, the realization was that the opportunities for Christians that are serious about their faith in Hollywood were shrinking, right? Because the message, the importance of the message, rather than it being about the entertainment and about serving an audience, it was more and more about the message. Is it in service of their definition of justice for society, that sort of thing. It was becoming more and more apparent, and even folks that I knew that weren't Christians but were generally conservative were literally shifting the way they tweeted, shifted the way that they presented themselves to be more in line with social justice, even though they didn't care about it.
They put their pronouns in their bios.
Yeah, that sort of thing. It was before that became a thing, but it was the equivalent of that. So I'm watching the circle close, and I'm just keeping my mouth shut. And there was this one point where I'm in a writer's room, working through an issue, and all of a sudden, the producer stops and looks at me, and he says, "Do you believe in abortion?" And I was like, "Nope." And he said, "Not in any case?" I said, "Not in any case." And he went, "Huh." And then he turned and tried to get the room started again. but it was like all of a sudden he realized we'd been working together. We'd worked on a number of projects. And we were friends.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden he realized that, and realized that that there wasn't a future for me the direction that he was going.
Yeah.
And it just that was as that was happening, it was COVID comes in and ends all of the writing work anyway, including the TV show that I had in development with a Netflix producer. I got the call like, "Hey, we're just gonna 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then when we get back, we're signing your show, and we've got the budget all worked out, and it's on the desk to be signed." And they literally never went back to that office. They ended up shutting the office down.
Oh my gosh.
Like 6 months
And
later.
it's still on that desk
It's
to this
still
day.
on that desk, yeah. So
They all work from home now.
right, they all work from home, but
They lost the key.
but the show was based on Dante's Inferno, based on Dante's Divine Comedy, and every time I had to talk to a new producer, they would say, hey, all of these references to God, do those need to be in there, right? And I would say, well, yes, because it's based on Dante's Divine Comedy, which is a trip through hell, purgatorio, heaven, right? So it's central to the theme of the whole thing. You
Can't
it's,
have hell without God.
right? Yeah. So it's not a preachy. It was a Freaks and Geeks style teen comedy. So it's not, but they have to be having discussions about God along the way to be able to actually legitimately say, yes, this is based on Dante.
Yeah.
And the way my wife put it when the option expired was, but you really didn't want them having control of it anyway, right? Yeah, although it's still a disappointment, but yeah, it's true, because there's a point at which you're not going to gain control. You're not going to keep control. So in a real sense, COVID sort of freed me from the direction that I was going, and I was having good success, and we had made it into some different development rooms and things, and was enjoying myself a lot.
Yeah.
But when things came back after COVID, it was much worse. The vaccine, the COVID masks, the everything. If there was one person out of 150 that was afraid, then everybody had to act according to their fear. That sort of thing had taken over completely, and so in a lot of ways, because of that, I'm very grateful that I'm not there in that aspect of the industry. But my heart is still set on the storytelling to serve my neighbor and to serve people, to serve especially underserved audiences, teenagers, men, people that don't get stories made for them. So when David introduced me to Marcus and saw what he was doing, it's like, yeah, that's what needs to happen.
That's what needs to happen. And so, Marcus, you started work on Loor before Jason was involved.
Well, yeah, when that was maybe August of 2020.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was super early. We didn't even have an investor yet.
Okay.
Right? I think,
Yeah,
we didn't even have an investor yet. We were just kind of like assembling the team, and the idea was formed. I think first pitch deck was made, and
how was the idea formed?
yeah. So I led advertising for an agency that did all of PureFlix's advertising. So I was responsible for basically all the content that went out. $1.5 million a month, or sometimes more, advertising the worst Christian movies you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
And always for 35-year-old women. So I had tons of discussions with PureFlix. I always only met with the top executives of the company when I did talk with the company, and I just asked them. I was like, what if we instead of spending so much money advertising only to women, we started really focusing on making good content? And I was told, well, how do you define with math what is good? And I never got over that question. And I was like, well, I'm a Christian. God created the heavens and the earth and all the art, and he called it good. So there has to be an objective standard for what that is. But I quickly learned that PureFlix, I was told this, PureFlix was a math company, and that's what it was, And so I left that job. I left that job, and made my own movie, Babies Are Still Murdered Here, which was a sequel to a documentary I did several years before. And made that movie. We put it up on Amazon Prime. And yeah, it had a pretty decent reaction. It wasn't a massive hit or anything. But we had a big billboard up on Arizona freeway that said Babies Are Still Murdered Here, watch on Amazon Prime or whatever. And then I remember like somebody messaging me saying they couldn't find it on Amazon. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's still up. And I went, and sure enough, Amazon removed it, didn't give any reason why they removed it. And so ultimately, working for the Christian film industry, and then working on my own movie and putting it through distribution on the secular film platform, I realized there was a massive problem because any movie that stepped outside of what was defined as a Christian movie was not going to be carried on the Christian platforms, and it wasn't going to be carried on the secular platforms. So ultimately, at the core, there wasn't like a lack of creativity in the Christian community, but there was a distribution problem. Like we had no distribution, you know, and we used to own VHS distribution. We had VeggieTales and McGee and Me and Gerber and Adventures in Odyssey on cassette tapes. They sold Gerbert and Adventures in Odyssey cassettes in the Happy Meal for Chick-fil-A, right? So it's like we used to have Christian art. As we can look back on it now and go, man, that was really cheesy and corny. But it was ours, and we knew it was cheesy and corny, but we loved it. And we had a lot of distribution. But ever since the Christian bookstores closed down, we didn't have it at that. So basically, there's a lack of distribution, and then of course there's also a problem for filmmakers in that they don't have any funding. So those are the two problems in the Christian film industry: is distribution and funding. And I thought, funding you can get from Kickstarter, so you just really need the distribution. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, what if you just put the funding and distribution together as one platform, so that anything that gets funded streams on the platform, so that way you don't have the problem where Kickstarter has, where there's no distribution for those movies. None of those movies that get funded on Kickstarter ever end up anywhere. And they might go free on YouTube after the people who fund it on Kickstarter get their preview link. But that's where they might go on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
But like that, like there wasn't. So Kickstarter wasn't a solution. So I think about this time, the Cuties thing happened with Netflix, and then not only that, Netflix pulled out of filming in Georgia and North Carolina because of the abortion laws or some other political law that Carolina passed or whatever. So Georgia, the heartbeat bill, forced Netflix to pull out. And so there was just this really good opportunity to say, hey, now's the time to come in, and that's how Loor was built. We just put funding and distribution together. We got connected with, somehow by a miracle, Nathaniel Talbot heard about us and thought we were crazy enough to join. And he led all the development, and we raised our first $500,000, and then raised another $350,000, and we got the platform to launch, and that's the story. It's taken about 3 years to get, probably actually exactly 3 years, I think.
Crazy.
My wife sent me something that signified the official start. Well, we moved to Moscow in October of 2020, so that was when we knew we had the investment, we had everything ready to go. So,
I've got a couple of just like short questions. There's a show I'm excited about, funding now on Loor TV. What do I do?
So, assuming you already are signed up and have a subscription, the first thing you do is you've got your silver loot that comes with your subscription, and you put it towards the show that you want. Then the next thing you can do is buy extra loot for the show, buy gold loot, and put it towards the show. And then really the most important thing is then invite your friends. Because the way that the platform works is it's like a snowball. The more people that are signed up, the more loot is in the system. The more loot's in the system, the faster things fund.
Gotcha.
So the biggest thing is invite your friends, explain to them why they should love the show too, and explain how it works. Because I remember the first time I had a friend that used Kickstarter. I got an email from him personally saying, "Hey, I'm doing this thing called Kickstarter. Here's how it works, and here's what I'm doing." And I went over and put money towards this really cool comic book series about about Boy Scouts that have to fend off a zombie apocalypse. It's a fantastic series. But he explained it all to me in the email because I didn't know what Kickstarter was.
Right.
And so I've since funded other episodes, funded a whole bunch of things on Kickstarter. Failed at running my own Kickstarter campaign for a children's book, and but it's about the communication from a friend that says, "Let me tell you why you should join me in this." I think it's the most effective thing that we've got.
Excellent. Anything to add to that, Marcus? Or...
Well, I think we should explain why we use what the whole loot system is. So, whatever your monthly subscription is, Netflix or Disney, your dollars go towards the Hollywood executives at the top, and that pulls together all the millions of monthly subscribers to any streaming platform. And then they take a portion of that monthly subscription of every dollar you spend on the platform, and they fund the movies and content that you want to see, right? So they fund, movies and content you don't want to see, right? So they take the money, they pull it together, and every dollar of your monthly subscription, a percentage of it goes towards funding content you don't want to see. What we decided to do was let's just take that portion of the monthly subscription that usually would go to people at the top to make the decision on what you should watch for you. Let's give that back to the audience as sort of easiest way to describe it is Chuck E. Cheese tokens, right? You go to Chuck E. Cheese, you put your cash in, and then they give you tokens back and you can go and play the game. So the Chuck E. Cheese tokens, we call it loot, and then you use that loot every week. You get a cut of your monthly subscription that you can fund movies and TV shows with. So that's silver loot. Gold loot is think like Roblox dollars or Fortnite V-Bucks, right? Like it's just an extra allotment of cash to spend on the platform funding your movies and TV shows. So we've basically just taken the mechanisms of the video game industry, which has brought in $100 billion last year. And we just taken those same mechanisms and applied that towards funding movies.
Right.
With the theory, and I think the correct theory, that people care more about funding movies and TV shows than they do uniforms and extra lives in a video game. So...
There is a show that I don't like streaming on Loor TV. What should I do?
Make a lot of angry posts about it on social media. No, so you absolutely can. You're free to do that. That's the beauty of our platform. Is we're going to present. We're basically a content making machine, right? We're going to spew out content and crazy ideas. And some are going to be good, some are going to be great, some are going to be not your thing. It's totally fine because a vast majority of your monthly subscription is not going to Loor. It's going to funding individual artists. So it's okay for you to not like an artist. A real artist gets criticism for his work all the time, and they're totally okay, and they can recover from it. So you get to fund the content and TV shows that you want to see, and you don't fund the shows that you don't want to see. You don't have that power with any other streaming platform. If Disney Plus releases something, with a gay princess, you don't have any say as to whether or not that gets made. They make it with your money, whether you want to see it or not. So at least for our platform, if you're presented with something, whether it's a whole pilot, a whole episode, or just a pitch, you get to decide whether there'll be more of that. And so that's the power of having freedom. And it means you're going to watch stuff you don't like. But at least you get to choose whether or not there should be more of it. So.
Right.